differences of people, that there were common hopes and common dreams and common aspirations, common values that stitched us together as Americans. And so even though I, after 3 years, left for law school, the lessons that had been taught to me here as an organizer are ones that stayed with me and effectively gave me the foundation for my subsequent political career and the themes that I would talk about as a state legislator and as a U.S. Senator and ultimately as President of the United States. Now, I tell you that history because on the back end now of my presidency, now that it's completed, I'm spending a lot of time thinking about what is the most important thing I can do for my next job. And what I'm convinced of is that although there are all kinds of issues that I care about and all kinds of issues that I intend to work on, the single most important thing I can do is to help in any way I can prepare the next generation of leadership to take up the baton and to take their own crack at changing the world. Because the one thing that I'm absolutely convinced of is that, yes, we confront a whole range of challenges, from economic inequality and lack of opportunity to a criminal justice system that too often is skewed in ways that are unproductive, to climate change, to issues related to violence. All those problems are serious, they're daunting, but they're not insoluble. What is preventing us from tackling them and making more progress really has to do with our politics and our civic life. It has to do with the fact that because of things like political gerrymandering, our parties have moved further and further apart, and it's harder and harder to find common ground. Because of money in politics, special interests dominate the debates in Washington in ways that don't match up with what the broad majority of Americans feel. Because of changes in the media, we now have a situation in which everybody's listening to people who already agree with them and are further and further reinforcing their own realities to the neglect of a common reality that allows us to have a healthy debate and then try to find common ground and actually move solutions forward. And so, when I said in 2004 that there were no red states or blue states, they're the United States of America, that was an aspirational comment, but I think it's, and it's one, by the way, that I still believe, in the sense that when you talk to individuals one-on-one, there's a lot more that people have in common than divides them. But obviously it's not true when it comes to our politics and our civic life. And maybe more pernicious is the fact that people just aren't involved. They get cynical and they give up. And as a consequence, we have some of the lowest voting rates of any advanced democracy, and low participation rates then translate into a further gap between who's governing us and what we believe. The only folks who are going to be able to solve that problem are going to be young people, the next generation. And I have been encouraged everywhere I go in the United States, but also everywhere around the world, to see how sharp and astute and tolerant and thoughtful and entrepreneurial our young people are. A lot more sophisticated than I was at their age. And so the question then becomes, what are the ways in which we can create pathways for them to take leadership, for them to get involved? Are there ways in which we can knock down some of the barriers that are discouraging young people about a life of service? And if there are, I want to work with them to knock down those barriers and to get this next generation in, to accelerate their move towards leadership. Because if that happens, I think we're going to be just fine. And I end up being incredibly optimistic. So, with that, what I'd like to do is to have our panelists here today each tell us a little bit about themselves. And what I've asked them ahead of time, and I did give them the question ahead of time, I asked them to describe for me what it is that they see among their peers that they think discourages voting, participation, paying attention to some of the issues, getting involved. Or do they have some immediate suggestions of the kinds of things that would get young people more involved and engaged and discover their voices? Once we've gone through the entire panel, then we're just going to open it up and we're going to see how it works. And hopefully it will be interesting. I'll find it interesting. Hopefully you find it interesting. All right? So we're going to start with Kelsey.
Well, thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, everyone. It is an absolute honor to be here with you all. My name is Kelsey. I'm a senior at Loyola University of Chicago, where I've spent the last 4 years studying marketing with minors in sociology and leadership studies. I've had the pleasure of being very involved on Loyola's campus with a number of different things going on. I'm looking forward to graduating in less than 2 weeks and pursuing my master's in higher education and student affairs. And I think to answer your question, my passion for working with college students does stem from the ability to work with activists and to work with community engagement, and really understanding that college students during that transformative time is the opportunity for students to learn about these important issues and really find their voice. Understanding that we can't just get discouraged when something doesn't go our way immediately, but really being able to work towards that end common goal.
Fantastic. Okay.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Ramel. I grew up in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I am a U.S. Army veteran. I major in sociology with a minor in legal studies at Roosevelt University. Yeah. I work currently I'm a research assistant at Roosevelt University, focusing on community-based collaborative research projects. We've worked on projects ranging from landlord-tenant issues to youth leadership programs, and currently we're working on a project about the day labor market in Chicago, in the city of Chicago. It's a pleasure to be here, Mr. President.
Fantastic. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Tiffany. I was raised on the south side of Chicago in a low-income household. I graduated valedictorian from Burnside Scholastic Academy and the top 10 from Kenwood Academy. Broncos in the house. I graduated #1 from Chicago State University with my bachelor's in chemistry, and graduated from Chicago State a second time with my doctorate in pharmacy. Thank you. I've currently been a community pharmacy manager on the south side of Chicago and for the past 3 years, and I'm also author of 10 Tactics to Tackle Studying. It's the guide to elementary school, high school, and undergraduate success.
Okay.
I'm Max, and you can see what they've made me follow now. I have been involved in civic engagement and civic life here at the University of Chicago through the Institute of Politics, which has been an absolute blessing and a fantastic resource to all of us. The summer after my first year here, they gave stipends so that I think the number was 16 of us could go to Des Moines for the summer of 2015 to either work with certain press agencies or with campaigns. And I mean, I think that was a really eye-opening experience in terms of having to campaign directly and how far you can move the needle by moving one vote in the caucus. And I'll have more time on this later. I've also been involved on campus with student government and college Republicans.
Fantastic.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ayana Watkins. I'm the baby of the panel. I'm currently a senior at Kenwood Academy High School. And throughout my high school career, I've been involved in numerous student-led organizations, multiple sport teams, etc. And outside of high school, I've been involved in a lot of community-based organizations to volunteer my time with the youth as well. And in the fall, I will be attending Paul Quinn College in Dallas, Texas, with multiple scholarships in my name. And I'm also an entrepreneur, I would say, with my own clothing line.
Okay. All right.
Peace and blessings, y'all. My name is Harish Patel, and I live on the northwest side of Chicago. I arrived as a proud immigrant around the age of 14 with my mom and my sister from Gujarat, India, and attended public schools, and then went to University of Illinois, Chicago, both for my undergraduate studies and for my master's in urban planning and policy. After graduating, I did become an organizer with somebody in the audience that I want to point out, Rami Nashishibi, who's been a mentor of mine. That experience sort of led me to run for office, and most recently, now I work for New America Chicago, and I'm the deputy director here in Chicago, where we sort of do what we're doing today. We infuse new ideas, new voices in public policy conversation. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Fantastic. Excellent. All right, so as you can see, we have an extraordinary group here of sharp young people. But you'd also notice that they kind of avoided my question. So, but that's good, because it tees up the next segment. And look, in the presidential election, you have maybe half of your peers voting. In midterm elections, about a third of your peers vote. I suspect that if you ask a lot of young people about a wide range of issues, regardless of where they sit ideologically, they would say, yeah, I'm very concerned about the economy, I'm very concerned about foreign policy, I'm very concerned about this or that or the other. But a lot of them feel as if their involvement would not make a difference. It's not worth their time. And in fact, they're discouraged, but feel disempowered. Right? So all of you have already shown yourselves to be willing to get out there and be involved and to make a difference. And I'm curious as to what is it you think that prompted you to get involved in some fashion? And also, when you talk to your friends, what is it that you think is preventing them from doing so that might make a difference? And we don't have to go in order. So if anybody wants to start, I like that in you. Go ahead.
So although I am in high school, you know, a lot of my peers, so I'm a senior, so of course some of my peers were able to vote this year. But overall, I'm grateful that I have the opportunity to take courses at Kenwood Academy, Kenwood Academy High School, that involve political science. We take African American studies, etc. But not a lot of schools have that opportunity. So I would say awareness is something that holds a lot of our youth back from getting involved, because I'm privileged, so therefore I step up and I encourage others to get involved and to have a voice. but I think the youth feel like they don't have a voice. So that plays a huge factor as to why the results are the way they are, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it makes a lot of sense. Do you think that as you were coming up, social studies, civic education, what kids are getting in the classroom would make a difference? Do you think that it would make more of a difference if young people had the opportunities to volunteer with organizations, to engage in community service? What is it you think that would make the biggest difference in young people seeing, you know what, if I volunteer for this organization, I might make a difference in my community, or if I participate on this issue, somebody might hear my voice and it might actually make a difference. What do you think would be most effective in encouraging people?
So I feel like in order to encourage the youth, it involves to have a strong support system behind it to bring the youth up. So for instance, in school, we are taught social studies, but we tend to focus on mathematics, science, English, because that's what we're always brought up on because of tests, exams, etc. So social studies and civic education tends to be pushed to the side. Mm-hmm. So I feel like it should be encouraged in the school systems because majority of our youth are in school, of course. And then from there, build outside programs. Right. Mm-hmm. So, from there,
Yeah, so Come on. Yeah, so I agree with Ayana right. Because since I went to Kenwood too, that was kind of the start of me getting my foot in the door to want to expand and do outside things. I think also funding after-school programs and summer programs because I had 2 to 3 jobs ever since 8th grade every summer because one, you make money, so so that was one, but also that helped my resume, helped me get my feet wet to allow me to see different opportunities, to see if I like being a counselor, if I wanted to be a cheerleading coach, if I wanted to be a tutor. So just trying different things every summer helped me to kind of hone in as to what I want to do with the rest of my life. And then after school programs too, the funding for that, it helps keep the kids off the street. So hopefully in Chicago we'll have less violence since they'll have something to do. And then you're also enriching their lives. So in school and after school and also in the summer.
Fantastic. Okay.
Mm-hmm. So
I'm sorry. Kelsey, I know didn't you work, was it the Bronx that you worked during the summer? And what prompted you to, first of all, describe what the experience was, and then give us a sense of what inspired you to do something like that.
So I have been blessed at Loyola to be involved with our Alternative Break Immersion program, which is a program that sends students on trips over spring break as well as winter break. So the spring break of my junior year of college I spent in the South Bronx working with an incredible group at an elementary school out there. We took a group of 10 students and were really there, kind of like a lot of what you all were saying, to enrich those students' lives for the week that we were there. I think what's so unique about the way we run this program at Loyola is we understand the privilege that we have to be welcomed into these communities. We are not there to support them. While we are supporting them, we are there to learn from them, to understand the experiences that these students are having, but really to understand just how wonderful so many of these young elementary school kids are. I remember the principal at Immaculate Conception, which is a school that we were at, coming up to us at the end of the day and said, I hope you all realize that this is the only week out of the year the students get to finger paint because it is too messy with just one teacher in the room. It took having a lot of us there to make sure that they were able to do that. A very simple thing, but really goes to show the impact that young people can have in these communities.
Now, Ramel, you were going to say something, and obviously your service in the military is an example of public service that I think thankfully everybody now appreciates. That wasn't always the case. But what I discovered, obviously, was that once our veterans take off the uniform, and they leave service, sometimes people forget how much talent is there and the need to tap into the amazing young people that have served in our military so that they can work in the community and continue the leadership that they've shown while they were in the military. You've been able to make that transition, but talk a little bit about your mindset, both when you went into the military and after you left. How did that change your perception in terms of your responsibilities to your community and how you might be able to make a difference?
Well, when I joined the military, I joined 6 months out of high school. I was working full-time. I wasn't in school. I wasn't in college, where I come from. Being in college is a big deal. Graduating is an even bigger deal. But it's all about graduate high school, you know, get a job, do stuff like that. And I was in the military, and I realized there's so much more to that. And that I am being afforded this wonderful opportunity to engage with so many different people from all over the country, have so many different views, but we all share the same purpose, same goal. And I realized that if I wanted to make a larger contribution, I was going to have to go to school. And so that's what I did. I served my initial contract. I received the honorable discharge March 2014. I moved to Chicago June 2014. I was in Roosevelt August 2014. And I didn't do it by myself. When I got out of the military, I was part of this program called Veterans Upward Bound. And it's a pre-college readiness program for veterans that need to brush up on their academic skills before they enter college. And that being a part of that literally saved me taking extra courses, remedial courses. So I benefited immensely from that. Mm-hmm. And I was fortunate enough to get a research assistant position at Roosevelt, and that really got me going, because I was working with different projects, youth, landlords. I mean, it was amazing, because like these are regular folks, and that's something I definitely wanted to get involved in. And to answer your question about what I think is preventing youth, I believe that what we need to do, I believe that we need to connect personal problems with like public issues. I feel like sometimes, you know, you're working 2 jobs and you can't afford daycare. It's not because you're lazy. So if we can establish some sort of connection, demonstrate some sort of connection, and I'm really big on like collecting data and numbers, and listen, 80% of people are experiencing this in your community, and you just don't know it yet. You don't see it, but here's the numbers, here are the facts. So I believe that is a huge thing that we can do to help that.
Well, look, you're making a terrific point. One of the things that I learned when I was organizing, and this is true for, I think, a lot of young would-be do-gooders. You know, you show up in a neighborhood, and your initial instinct is to tell people what they should be interested in, instead of spending the first 6 months listening and finding out what they actually are interested in, and then connecting, you know, connecting their immediate needs to the policies that are having influence on those areas of concern. And you know, the more that you can make concrete for people, the fact that the reason there aren't enough after-school programs is not just because they're impossible to set up, but have to do with budget. And here are the people who are making the decisions about the budgets. And the reason that there's a lack of child care is not because you know, you're the only single mom who needs child care. Everybody needs child care, but there aren't enough facilities in place with trained child care providers, and this is what a change in public policy could do to provide everybody support. That's when you start bringing people together and their voices are amplified. Because what's certainly true is one voice by itself rarely changes something. 2 voices have a better shot. 20 voices? Okay, we're getting somewhere. But it begins with that listening process that you're talking about, so that people feel like they're being heard at the outset. So I think that's a great point. Now, Max, were you somebody who was always interested in politics generally, or is this something that kind of came to you? And since you know you've been active in college Republicans, two questions around that. Number one, do you feel as if on college campuses sometimes you're not heard as much as you'd like to be, and because I think there's certainly a perception sometimes among young people who are on the more conservative end of the spectrum that colleges are a bastion of political correctness, and how do you sort of sort through that? But also, have you found ways in which you can connect and have a conversation with the college Democrat and the person who has a different point of view, so that we can encourage better conversations and better understanding and hopefully more progress?
Yeah, so I think being interested in politics, I don't know that I came from a particularly politically active family. My mother was involved in the PTA when I was a child, right. And that...
PTA,
no, I mean, it's real...
PTA is a lot of work. Y'all have,
I mean, in Connecticut it is blood sport, but that's... I think the message that something like that would send is, she didn't need to do that.
Right.
She did that because the educational system and more broadly the community that was fostered in the town was important to her and something worth giving her time to and something worth, going out and... no one pays you to do this, and you take a great deal of flack. So I certainly honor that commitment. And I think, in 8th grade, which was your first election, mm-hmm. we, in social studies, were told...
Can I just say... I'm old. Yeah. But please continue. In 8th grade. Yeah. Go ahead.
In 8th grade, we were... All right, I'll pick a different age to be. We each at the beginning of the year picked a campaign to follow, sort of through to fruition. And each week we did a report for our teacher on how that candidate had been featured in the news, any sort of polling information that we had accumulated. We never got them back, but it was an interesting process in that it taught us to care about the news in a time when, maybe that wasn't something that you went home and watched. Right. And it was something that made you more cognizant of the issues. I was fortunate enough to go to high school in New Hampshire where we're pandered to immensely heavily. And, even it's just part of the whole ethos that every 4 years they care. Or that people care about what New Hampshire has to say. And I think that one of the things that is a shame in that process is that there is a group that is active every 4 years because they're influential, they're big in the towns they're from, but you said don't boo vote, but don't boo act might be more apt, because you have a lot of these people who engage with the process only every 4 years and then are sort of gone for the in-between period. Mm-hmm. And then you have some who, if you're brought up that way and you're brought up to believe that your opinion's going to count for something, then go on to do big things. I had a friend whom I went to high school with, and she's been from New Hampshire her whole life. She's, I think, 20 now, and she's a state rep. Because, she ran for an open seat, and that's just how it goes up there. There's a commitment. In terms of being involved in politics, I was fortunate enough to take a year between high school and college, and I worked in Washington, D.C. in the Senate. And that's an eye-opening experience because it forces you to confront in a real way what you believe and why, and you gain a lot of information very, very quickly. I'm immensely grateful to Kelly Ayotte for the opportunity. And then, after coming here, that sort of changed my worldview. I thought I would come here and be an economist, like I think every first year believes at some level here. And that, coupled with my time at the Institute of Politics, which was a good structured force to show that there was a way, there were many, many venues for us to engage civically, let me explore things like campaigning in Iowa. Now, I mean, as for being a Republican on a college campus, you know, yesterday NBC ran an article about this on their website, and it didn't say who we were. It just said the composition was one Republican and the rest were Democrats or progressives. And I had maybe 3 people send me the article and say, "Is it you?" But and it is if you're watching. But you know, I would say it depends on the setting whether it's something I'm particularly forthcoming with. At the Institute of Politics itself, I think most people know at this point, and certainly in the beginning of 2016 when caucus season was going on, those of us who'd been in Iowa and could do caucus math, which is, as you know, not real math, but that made you a hot commodity in the room when you would watch the votes tally. But there were venues certainly where I wouldn't have brought it up or wouldn't have been particularly forthcoming with it. I think people suspected it, but you know, I didn't. I'll leave that to the other student government people in the room to confirm or not. But I don't necessarily know what I was afraid of, but I think that there's a sense that if you harbor a view that doesn't jive with the majority view, that you can expect some level of ostracization from certain people, or you can expect people to assume the worst aspects of you based on beliefs you may or may not hold, right? You know, I don't think anyone sitting in this room agrees with their party on 100% of issues 100% of the time for 100% of the people in their party. Mm-hmm. I mean, I might be wrong, but if you raise your hand, I can't see you. Right. Yeah. And so I think that being a Republican on a college campus is in and of itself a sort of honor, because you know, most people don't agree with you, and when you engage in the dorms and in the dining halls, and you know, with those people who are able to see you, the person, and then you, the person with the political views, you're forced to know yourself well and to do soul searching well, and to understand why it is that you think what you think, and what parts of your past impact what you believe now and might believe, you know, tomorrow. I think the other thing is there's a significant empathy gap, not just here but everywhere. You know, I think most people haven't had in their homes for dinner, you know, in a real way, somebody who is significantly different from them, either politically or racially or for whatever reason. We've cloistered ourselves. And so I think that the liberal bastion aspect of college campuses certainly can be true. I've been, you know, lucky here. The school's certainly committed to accepting, you know, our thoughts. But I think a broader societal problem is that as we, you know, if you look at the county map of 2016, you had, you know, a lot of counties where, you know, Secretary Clinton won over 80% of the vote, and the inverse was true for the president now. But I mean, and there's not understanding, we're not talking, it's not just that we're reading different news, but it's that we don't talk to each other anymore. And I think, you know, it would be good, civic engagement at some point will require a level of civility. I think there's a lot of problems with our politics.
That's great.
You know, there's a lot of problems with our politics that begin at home. I think we blame intransigent politicians a lot for the failure of each of us to grasp each other well. I mean, so your mentor when you were a new senator, Dick Lugar.
Great guy.
Yeah, and
love that guy.
And ultimately lost his primary for that reason.
Because he talked to me.
Yeah, because people couldn't stand to see their member, you know, bridge a gap on a human level. Yeah. And I think that's sad. I think there's both an empathy gap, and also I think a lot of people see politics, especially in this generation, and they say, this is ugly, this is mean, this is something that you have, you know, pretty experienced people doing. And, you know, if the country's a ship and politicians are sailors, maybe the boat moves like a degree either way. But I think the lack of results stems from a lack of us understanding each other well. Mm-hmm. I think, you know, Marco Rubio said it pretty well a couple months ago, that you can't really run a country when half of it hates the other. And somehow we're going to have to find ways to bridge that and to meet people who aren't like us.
Good. Terrific. Rich, on this stage, other than me, I guess you're the other guy who's run for office.
The oldest.
Well, I wasn't going to say you're the oldest, but I was going to say you're the other guy who ran for office, and I know you lost, but I did too once, right here in this community.
I got some grade too. From
Yeah, there you go. But what prompted you to run for office, which is a different kind of engagement, and what did you take from the experience? Did you feel discouraged by it? Did you feel like, okay, this was fun, or if it wasn't fun, then it was worth it, and you would encourage other young people to take their shot? Tell me a little bit about your thought process there.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, I want to sort of start with the first time I ever did something that is considered civically engaged. I was an immigrant, so I couldn't vote until after Iraq War had already started. But the first thing I ever thought I'm doing that's like for this country was actually protesting the Iraq War, because I felt passionately that we were in the wrong side of history there. I think you were also at that point on that side.
I agreed with you at the time. Yeah.
But so I couldn't vote, but I felt like a lot of the times civic engagement in its sense gets stuck in the dynamic of voting or electoral engagement and doesn't always expand. I think we have to sort of expand it too, maybe what your mother did, or being on a board of a nonprofit, or these are tough positions to have, or it's a lot of work there, and I think I would hope moving forward we're sort of thinking about civic engagement beyond voting. But to directly answer the question around why I went from protesting to working at a nonprofit and organizing to thinking about, oh, electoral politics is one of the many routes that I'm going to engage in. And that happened, for me, actually happened in 2010. It was after I've done organizing that I saw that a lot of the jargon that was used against us as young people at that time, I didn't understand. So that's why I went back to college and understand some public policy language. When I ran, it was too, I don't have, my last name is Patel. There's not a lot of Patels in office. I just feel like.
A lot of Patels in India, though.
Oh, there's a lot.
I'm just saying, there are a lot more Patels than there are Obamas. I want to be clear.
Agreed. There are. I had a Hussein joke, but I'm not going to make it. So at some point I sort of felt that both, or more than, I don't want to get stuck in this two-party sort of language, but there's a lot of different cult of personalities of cult of politics that people, young people especially, get sort of drawn to, and they can't really go beyond the questions they're allowed to ask within. And so I wanted to be able to protest and be able to run for office and run a small business and do the organizing and be able to figure out which is the most effective way that I want to, live my life and be happy, but also sort of inspire a whole generation of folks that maybe look like me or come from a Muslim background or South Asian immigrants. Or I want them to, and most young people of color, to feel that they can literally do anything. So that was one of the major reasons. Also, Illinois has an establishment politics that is really old. Not old in age, but old in thinking. And there's a monopoly of power, money, ideas that only come from few families or sometime a few zip codes. And I wanted to say that it's not how we should move forward.
Good. Well, I think that's true. Couple of thoughts based on some of the things that folks have said. First of all, what you said, Harish, about there are a lot of different ways to engage, I think is important, because sometimes people think if you're not running for office or it's not election day, there's no other ways of getting involved. And the PTA is a perfect example of the kind of thing that we want to encourage. There are a bunch of writers out there and social scientists and thinkers that would argue that one of the problems that we have with our politics right now is that the mediating institutions, the unions, the churches, the PTA groups, the Rotary Club, a lot of the voluntary organizations that used to exist, black sororities and fraternities, and that used to bring people in together to then work on issues, that those have declined. And the statistics show that people are less likely to be involved with various organizations in their community than they used to be. And what that means is then people don't have some of the same habits of being together on a common project that they used to. We've become a more individualistic society. And that, I think, has some spillover effects when it comes to both political participation, but also in terms of empathy, because you're interacting with fewer people on a regular basis. The second thing, though, it has to do with how we get information. So I want to throw this out and see what people think. I think a lot of us who have been in politics for a while do see a change from 20 years ago, certainly 30 years ago, where it used to be everybody kind of had the same information, and we had different opinions about it, but there was a common baseline of facts, and that the internet in some ways has accelerated this sense of people having entirely separate conversations. And if this generation is getting all of its information through its phones, that you really don't have to confront people who have a different opinion or have a different experience or a different outlook. You know, if you're liberal, then you're on MSNBC, and conservative, you're on Fox News. Or you're reading Wall Street Journal, or you're reading the New York Times, or whatever your choices are. Or maybe you're just looking at cat videos, which is fine. One question I have for all of you is, how do you guys get your information about the news and what's happening out there? And are there ways in which you think we could do a better job of creating a common conversation now that you've got 600 cable stations and you've got all these different news outlets that basically are offering one set of opinions? And if there are two sets of opinions, then they're just yelling at each other, so you don't get a sense that there's actual conversation going on. And the internet's worse, right? It's become more and more polarized. How much do you think that affects how people think about issues, and are there ways that that could be changed, given that most of your information, and certainly for the younger people coming up behind you even more, they're getting their information primarily off their phones?